Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Best greeting. I am Qasim Muhammad Khurshid Hamamurad, PhD student in University Technology Malaysia, UTM. I have presented about Smart City Framework, Reconcile, and through this present I need to show you the introductions, proposed Smart City Framework component, and our conceptual framework, Smart City Framework, Reconcile. Then conclusion. At first, we must understand what is the smart city and why is smart city. Smart city is a city with infrastructure of information and communication technology, and we use smart city to improving the quality of life for the residents and developing sustainable and city infrastructure, traffic management, and so on. More than that, the smart city behind a country economy growth. So this my article is propose a realistic methodology for evaluating city smartness by estimating planned development initiative to stakeholders' actual requirement based on the smart city model established by Giffinger. If we see there is many smart cities in the world like Singapore, Seoul, London, and more. According to this list, the city development idea may be applied to the both existing city and the new city. If we come to the Malaysian Smart City, the Malaysian Smart City aim urbanization and challenged towards achieving the three main pillars. Malaysia three main pillars need to achieve this one smart city, this competitive economy, sustainable environment, enhancing quality of life. From 7 major components. The 7 major components are smart economy, smart living, smart environment, smart people, smart government, smart mobility, and digital infrastructure. So the proposed smart city framework, every smart city framework must include the definition of what? Must be include the definition of smart city faction, smart initiative on the ground, and actual stakeholder requirement. So through my conceptual framework to utilize or to evaluate any smart city, my proposed framework component is component of what? Component of the first one, smart city dimension, the second one, factions of the city, the third one is actual stakeholder requirement, the smart initiative on the ground, the fourth component. So it means by this fourth component, try to approve our conceptual framework to evaluate every smart city existed or new smart city. So the first component, we must know the smart city dimensions. The smart city dimension by Giffinger is approved or applied of European medium size. The Giffinger say we have the smart economy, smart government, smart mobility, smart environment, smart people, smart living inside the smart city. But smart city 3 pillars in Iskander, Malaysia, if we take a study case, there is a smart city utilized, Giffinger's model. How utilize it? Utilize it, smart economy, smart governments become economic pillar. Smart mobility, smart environment become environment pillar. Smart people, smart living become social pillar. So it means in that way, the smart city in Malaysia, especially for us, Iskander, Malaysian smart city, we have 6 pillars from Giffinger to become what? We have 6 dimensions, become 3 pillars in a Malaysian smart city, especially for Iskander. So the second one, the factions of this is very important for every smart cities and for our conceptual framework. Cities are now home to the majority of the world populations. So there is epicenter of technology, communications, and driving force behind the country's economic growth. As a result, city might be serve a variety of purposes, including maybe city make for political, maybe economic, maybe social object, maybe there is a different activity. So if we see the main city factions, there is administrations. The city for administrations like Washington and Putrajaya. This is an example. But there is other fractions city like city for commercial. There's a commercial city like New York, London, and Tokyo. And if you come back, there's a city for religion. There's Vatican, Mecca, and Urushalim. So it means there's the main factions of the city. So while we must understand, if we need to make a smart city, or if we make to evaluate the smart city, we must come back to the fourth main faction. The first one is smart city dimension, the second one the factions, the third one the actual stakeholder requirement. Actual stakeholder requirement, according to Aristotle say the city should be constructed to what? Constructed to provide residence security and happiness. So by this way, the city's demographic may be linked to its major role. The major role of every city is family size, demographically, educational level of the income, distributions, cosmopolitanism, on the ground. On the ground, smart initiative should be included any assessment of city smartness, observation, and document examinations. The city smartness observation is site visiting, is photographic recording, and field observation is very important, and document examination. So smart city initiative provisions that are currently in place can be used to evaluate on the ground activity. So it is the main four component of the proposed smart city framework component. We come back to our conceptual framework. Before we start, we need to explain about this component. So we have three cities as example. If we come back, we have many cities. Every country have a many cities. Every state have a many cities. So, are the cities equal in the characteristic? Really not. Really, there is a difference between the characteristics from city 1, city 2, city 3. Every city have a special characteristic. If you see, the characteristic of city number 1, economically, social, geographically, politically, is different from the characteristic of city number 2. And there's a difference from the characteristic of city number 3. So these are not equal. All of them is different. So there's a difference between the city characteristics. By this way, our conceptual framework, Reconcile, is precise. It is practical making. It's a great tool for local government looking to take the smart road. So, evaluating the gap. Our smart city framework Reconcile for evaluating the gap. There's the gap in the supply of smart city project. When we are supplied the smart city project, we find the gap when the actual offering fall short of the user expectations. So how we can evaluate the gap by our conceptual framework? Input Raja, we say, so by city vision and purpose and survey user requirement, with the Putrajaya specific smart city, we can evaluate the gap. So our conceptual framework we can use practically to evaluate any smart city or any new city to become a smart. The conclusion. Because of the smart city, main purpose is to operate in smart model for the city, and one city smart model may not operate with another smart city. So, smart city framework our conceptual framework recognize the importance of institutional issue in the city development and how they must be included in the city development strategy from the start. As a result, SCFR, our conceptual framework, is precise as it is practical, making a great tool for local government looking to take the smart road. So the proposed framework is Smart City Framework Reconciled, SCFR. This Smart City Framework Reconciled, our conceptual framework. For what? It is to determine the gap. So our conceptual framework is to determine the gap between the city smartness ideal against the city smartness actually. So it's ideal and there's actually. We can determine the gap. How? So we have smart city dimension and we have a city main function. By this way we can find the gap. Find the gap, smart initiative on the ground and actual stakeholder requirement we can find. Because as explained, every city factions have different stakeholder requirement, and every city dimension, the smart city dimension by the Giffinger is initiative on the ground. Thank you very much. with best regard for everyone. I hope it's benefit for you.